I want to verify you can see my screen successfully.
Yep, we can see it now.
Okay. As Bree mentioned, we're going to be talking about contact processes. This isn't necessarily a real deep dive into processes themselves because we're assuming that a lot of you on the call maybe use the processes in the LAN client, but there's some pretty important differences between processes that will successfully run in the web client versus what they do in the LAN client. Kind of the short answer to that is they cannot be interactive, and I'll explain that a little bit more. So contact processes are still there. They're still available to users in the web. They still do the majority of the things they did. But some of the more complex ones are not going to run successfully in the web, and that's part of what we hope to point out today in this Demystifying series is, well, what can I do? So an explanation of a contact process is it's a series of tasks that are executed over a specific sequence or period of time. Can automate repetitive tasks, provide consistent and automated way to follow up with your customers. And they're created using the SalesLogix Architect application, which is a web-based application, and we'll show you that too. And if you start to talk about the language of SalesLogix, you attach a process to a contact record. So they only run against contacts, not leads yet. So they run against contact records. You attach the process, which basically causes that process or series of tasks to start to run. And we're going to also introduce the concept of scanning processes because that's a little bit different in the web than it is in the LAN. So hopefully that'll make sense as we plug ahead. So each task in a process, which can be a phone call, a meeting, a to-do, a merge form, something like that, launches at the completion of the previous one. So processes are linear. They move from left to right, and they move through a procession. And those activities, as the previous one is completed, it can automatically schedule the next one, but it can also schedule it after a delay. And I'll show you how one of those works as well. And so again, attaching a process to a contact doesn't start the process. It has to be scanned. And so I'll show you how that happens specifically in the web. So the process must be started in the SalesLogix network client or the remote client, or there's also a process user that I'll show you, which is kind of cheating or a little bit of a shortcut in the web to make these things work without each individual user having to scan for their own processes. So in the SalesLogix web, the contact process manager is a view that allows you to see the processes that have been started, put on hold, or aborted, which means you killed it and don't want it to move any further through scheduling things. And we'll show you how that interface works as well. Talking a little bit more about the LAN versus the web. The contact process manager on the web allows you to view all of the processes in the system that are assigned to your contacts. You can add a new process or attach a process from there. You can also do that from the actual contacts processes tab. So we'll show you that as well. And any further changes to the process must be done in the network client, and we'll show you that as well. Processes are assigned one at a time in the web client, and this is one of the features missing in that you can add a process or attach a process to a group of contacts in the LAN client. Now, it doesn't mean it won't work that way in the web. You just can't initiate attaching a process to a group of contacts in the web client. So traditionally what people will do is say to their administrator, look, I built a group of my favorite customers, want to invite them to a golf outing. Would you please attach a particular process to that group for me? And the administrator can go into the LAN client, make that happen, and now in bulk it's attached that to multiple contacts at one time. Unfortunately, you just can't do that in the web. You have to do them one at a time the way it is today. The other limitation that we're going to talk about is contact processes. If you're going to run them for web users through the web client, they cannot have interactive steps, and I'll show you what that means as well. And then for all web client users, processes are scanned and run using the special process user who remains logged into the LAN client. And this works for both companies who have SalesLogix Web on-premise and also for cloud deployments. Next, we're going to show you how to change the status of a contact process. So once you've attached it and it has been started, so it's running and it's scheduling things and looking for something to do based on how you program the process, the SalesLogix Web users can suspend those or stop them temporarily, or they can abort them, which kills that process from ever proceeding any further. So it permanently ends the process if there's some reason that you need that to happen. Okay, and then the last thing we just want to mention is contact processes are not available to web viewer users. That's a special SalesLogix read-only license, and unfortunately you cannot schedule contact processes against contacts if you happen to be a web viewer user. That's your license type. Again, you can have the administrator do that for you through their login. Okay, so let's take a closer look at, well, what is a contact process? So I'm showing the SalesLogix Architect application, and I've just got a couple of examples of them. And there's a very simple one called a casual follow-up. That's what we're going to try and fire off today. And these processes, again, move from left to right. So they progress from the start through to the right. And you'll see in the middle of it, it has 0 months. That means there's no delay. I haven't asked the system to wait any period of time before scheduling the first meeting or the second phone call, but you can. So if we double-click on this particular meeting in this casual follow-up one, it will bring up the screen to allow you to make changes and modifications to it. And so what we're looking at now is a specific meeting that's going to fire as step 1 in the casual follow-up contact process. And as the administrator, you can build in some of these defaults. What's it regarding? What are the notes? Do I wait any length of time between scheduling this meeting or the previous activity that would have been completed prior to this? So here's where you can adjust things like that. When does it fire? You can actually make it so many days since it last fired, or you can schedule it to trigger on a schedule. You can also do things like set alarms, pick a category, and also some conflict checking. So if it's a meeting that's happening at a particular date on a particular time, you can have the process make sure that the user who's going to get this meeting scheduled for them doesn't already have a meeting that this is going to conflict with. So there's some choices there. Now again, this is a flyby of all of the mechanism under the hood here. We have other YouTube videos on our YouTube channel that dig much deeper into all the specifics and things you can do with a contact process. And so if you look at this trade show follow-up one, this is an example of one that does not work in the web. Why? Because it has an interactive question. In the LAN client, once I completed the qualification phone call, which was scheduled automatically for me, upon completing that call in the LAN client, this screen would have popped up for me and asked me a question. What is it that happened as a result of the call? And in this particular case, there are 3 choices of what could have happened. They could have said, I'm interested, let's carry on this branch. I have no budget, but maybe just stay in touch with me. And then this one that says, don't ever call me again, I have no interest. And so this lower branch would be one that it would transition to. Now, contact processes for the web can change their branch, as you see this one doing, but they can only do it on data conditions. They can't do it based on the user answering a question, okay? So that's what we mean by they cannot be interactive. So they're not quite as sophisticated, but still can get an awful lot of work done. Now this one, the quarterly contact, is just what it sounds like. It's designed to schedule a phone call every 3 months for a contact that you've attached it to. And there's no delay between scheduling them, but you can set up a 90-day after the first phone call, the Q1 follow-up is done. You can see that the second one, the Q2, is designed to be scheduled 90 days after the start of the process. So regardless of when the Q1 follow-up call happened, whether he did it a week early or a week late, the second one is still going to fire 90 days from the beginning of the process. So that's one way of delaying when these activities actually get scheduled. What you don't want to happen, of course, is have maybe hundreds of contacts with this quarterly follow-up, which is going to generate hundreds of scheduled activities on your activity screen, all looking like I'm supposed to be making all these calls right now. So these are designed in such a way that it only shows up as an activity I'm supposed to do at the appropriate time, rather than just plugging up my activity view with a bunch of calls I got to make 90 days from now. So it's really pretty cool the way it works. Okay, so now I'm going to show you this process user. This is SalesLogix 8.0, and I've logged into the LAN client here as a user called process. So literally in the username field, I typed in the word process. And when you do that, it doesn't take one of your licenses. It doesn't use a license at all. SalesLogix created this specialized process user whose purpose it is to scan the database on an interval that you choose to decide if any process events need to be fired or updated. So that's what it's doing. Traditionally, if you don't use the web client, each SalesLogix user scans his own processes, and that's what this little gear is in the lower right corner. This is an indicator that the process manager is running, and it's going to look for something to do based on the interval you told it to scan for. And I've got it set up for a minute. That's the minimum, but you maybe don't want it querying your database for all your users every minute. And so you can make that a little more comfortable by saying, well, maybe every half hour, an hour is adequate. So again, one of the differences in the web is there is no process scanner in the web client. All of those chores are handled by the single process LAN SalesLogix user. It's a global scanner that looks at all the processes for all the users in the entire system. So again, this works great with the on-premise, and it works great. We have lots of clients who use it in the cloud. So that's the job of the process user. So this sort of brings me full circle to now we're looking at, of course, the web client. And so where this all starts is if we look at the processes area. So under the sales navigation panel, I have an area called processes. And this gives me a global view of all of the processes that I've attached to my contacts. So I've logged in as admin, so I see everything. But if I'm logged in as a specific user, you're only going to see the processes that belong to the contacts where you have access to their accounts. And so this one is all processes. So it shows every process in the system, whether it's running or on hold or whatever it's doing, suspended. You can also see there's some groups here that can show you these are the ones that are completed. Completed processes mean every single step that was included, all the phone calls or all the meetings that were scheduled to happen have happened. You can also see ones that are in process, that are started but not yet running. If there's any suspended ones, you can see those here. Again, suspended is temporarily the user who's logged in, if it's their process, they can stop it by clicking on these little green and red balls over here. So if they click on abort, it kills this 7-month stretch permanently. If they click on the green, it's going to take the suspended process that I stopped, and it's going to start it up again. So if I click on that, which I did, you notice it dropped off as suspended. The reason is it's now back in process and it's running again. So it's going to be a running process and not suspended. So all I did is dropped out of that group by restarting it. Okay, let's take a look at a contact now. We'll go into John Abbott, who's our favorite guy to pick on in here. So in the web client, you'll notice you have a processes tab. And again, there's a slight difference in how you attach processes in the web versus the LAN. In the LAN, you have the ability to click on new, or rather schedule, I'm sorry, and start a process from here. In the web, the only way you can attach a process to John is you click on the little green plus sign here, and you can see it's being scheduled for John Abbott. That's the contact I was on. You can say, well, which process? And there are several of them that have been built in the architect, which we showed you, that have been saved and released out, and so now they're available. So if we choose the casual follow-up, the process owner is me. That's who's logged in. But remember, it doesn't matter because the process user is scanning them for everybody. But the administrator is who any phone calls, meetings, to-dos, emails, whatever it is. That's who's going to be, who's going to get those things scheduled for them. So if we go ahead and click Schedule now, you will see that indeed at the bottom here, there's a casual follow-up that started right now, and it's running. And once the process manager, I'm making this look more complicated than it is. I'm just trying to speed up time here. So back in the process manager, I've got it set to run every minute, but I don't want to make you sit here for a minute. So I'm going to tell it to scan them all right now. I'm not going to wait the 1-minute interval so we can speed up the process a bit here. Okay, so we'll give that a second to run here, and I might have to refresh to get it to show up. Let's see if it goes. There we go. So now it's moved from started to waiting, which means the first thing in that casual follow-up, which you remember is over here, a meeting. So a meeting is the first activity that this process is going to schedule, and it's called new meeting, not very clever. Received a business card, this person could be a potential lead, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's what we're expecting to see now on this calendar, and there it is. So the process scheduled this meeting, received a business card, this is a person that could be a potential lead. So the administrator automatically now has a meeting scheduled for right now. And once I complete that, and it is going to bring up the completing activity slip, and I can say complete it now because I just made the call, if that's what happened, and that creates a history record. Now, what that's going to do is fire the second thing that's supposed to happen, which is this follow-up call. So we'll open that up, and we can see, there we go, that again, this is scheduled with no delay. Immediately upon completing that first meeting, I need a phone call followed up because we need to call and follow up on the email, that kind of thing. So you get the point. So that is going to put now a second activity. Well, I should say another activity because we completed the first one. So there we go. So now we have a second call. I kind of goofed it up, but this is how it works. So I'm going to complete the next one, which is going to lead to the next step and the next step. So this was kind of a simple, silly one, but it made it easy to demo. You can make these as sophisticated as you want them to be. They can span a month or 6 months or a year or several years out. depending on what your needs are. Basically, you can just design as many of these as you want. The other thing you can do is you can have as many different contact processes running at one time against a contact record. So maybe John Abbott is set up for the casual follow-up, but maybe he's a quarterly contact candidate also. So in addition to all the activities that are getting scheduled for me for casual follow-up, he may also be getting a quarterly phone call scheduled that's as a result of a second process. Okay, well, Bree, that's what I was hoping to show. Seemed to be a success. Is there any questions that we need to address that somebody's asking?
You know what, Scott? I don't have any questions popping up right now.
Okay, I do see someone asked if it's being recorded, and the answer is yes. So within an hour or two, we'll have this on the Customer FX YouTube channel. And if you wanted to have some of your other staff or so forth look at what we just showed you today, you can absolutely do that. So hopefully that does indeed somewhat demystify contact processes, what they do, how they work in the LAN, why they're different between the LAN and the web, and some of the gotchas that you got to be careful of. But it really is a powerful part of SalesLogix that can do a lot of the work for you. All right.
Scott,
yeah.
I think people just needed a second here because we do have a few questions that popped up.
Yeah.
The first one is, can you do this for leads?
No. Contact processes, unfortunately, are only for a contact record. They're not for a lead record.
Okay. The next one I have is, are there any default processes with the web version?
I think, I'm not positive, but I think these couple of them that I'm showing you today are in there. I'm not positive, though. So there might be a handful of a couple of examples in there.
Okay. Is there an option to have the account manager be the leader assigned to the process?
Yes. Yes, you can. You have some flexibility in that. You can see that in the upper right here that this particular phone call can either be assigned to the process owner, which you saw me choose the process owner when I picked that casual follow-up for John Abbott. You can also have it be assigned to a specific user, and or you can have it assigned to the person who assigns the process. So when you attach a process to a contact, it defaults to whoever's logged in, but you can choose a different user. So perhaps you have a sales administrator who is scheduling processes for salespeople. Well, they can do that. They can schedule it for your contacts and make you the person who is actually going to get those activities scheduled against them.
Okay. Let me see. Can emails be automatically fired through processes?
They can. Activities are part of the task, but you can also have it fire a mail merge, which can be a document or an email or a literature request. So all you'd have to do is drag that task over the top of the last step in the process. And so now you'll see that an email is part of what's going to happen here. So you can choose the email template. So it's part of the mail merge engine that's coming into play here. So I can say at this point I want to have it send an email regarding, and you can have it go ahead and include one of your email templates if you want, or you can just have it schedule a to-do, which is to send an email that's blank.
Okay. Well, Scott, that wraps up the questions we have right now. But if any of you out there think of something later, please send us an email at info@customerfx.com, or if you have Scott or my email, you are more than welcome to send an email to one of us as well.
Great. That's it. Thanks, everybody, for your time today and allowing us to show this to you. And hopefully next month we'll have another whiz-bang demo of some kind to show you, something else to demystify. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.